Morning, everybody. That music is a little happy for the occasion. I'm Julie Roginski here with Michelle Kinney. Folks, we're going to have a Saturdays for Sanity show this morning, which is what I thought we were getting when I woke up this morning. But instead, this is an emergency show because the United States is at war once again in the Middle East, this time with Iran, a country that is exponentially larger than Iraq. Exponentially more complicated than Iraq, a country where the United States has already tried regime change once. It did not work out well, and it led to the rise of the Ayatollahs, which is who are in charge of the Islamic Republic of Iran today. As we sit here right now, Israel is under attack with ballistic missiles. So is our naval base in Bahrain. And in the next hours and days, I'm certain that other strategic allies and interests of the United States, including potentially our homeland here, will be subjected to Iran attacks.
Yeah.
Michelle, we to break this all down, I think we have some guests, but before we do that, I know I woke up a little earlier than you this morning, and I texted you when you woke up.
You did. I woke up at about 8 o'clock. I went to bed at 12:30, and first my husband sneezed, and that woke me up first, and then he kind of tapped me, and he goes, Michelle. He goes, we attacked. And I go, God damn it. I was like, there goes my whole morning show of wanting to talk about Connor's story, hosting SNL tonight.
Right.
Instead, we have to talk about this because it's serious, and every day is horrible. And now we're in a Jeffrey Epstein war. And, it's very, I don't know what else to say, except we need to bring in people who can talk about this maybe in a more eloquent way than me just not even really having words this morning. So with that said, Julie.
Yes, we have our friend Lieutenant Colonel Urso here, who of course has an extraordinary military background. Hi, Jaclyn. Great to see you this morning. And we have our friend Jeff Jarvis, who has been following the way the media has been covering this debacle. And great to see you also, Jeff. Thank you to both of you for joining us this morning and lending your expertise in your respective areas, because both are equally important. Jaclyn, I'll start with you. If you were still in the military right now, what would you be thinking? What would you be doing? What are your former colleagues thinking and doing this morning?
I feel like we're a rogue state at this point. There's no congressional consent. There's no UN charter, UN Security Council resolution. We've got no allies that are supporting us. We're sitting ducks out there in the middle of the Mediterranean. We don't have enough ammunition. What are we going to do next? We already got into some forever wars with Afghanistan and Iraq. We were out there doing some, there's no political end state. As Clausewitz says, war is an extension of politics. There's no goals. There's no end states. There's no plan. What are we doing? Are we going to be building another, democracy in an area that's not fit for democratic regimes? I mean, what are we doing? Where are we going? Am I going to be caught up in another forever war? Now, this time we have no allies. We have no congressional consent. We have no UN. Where are we going? I mean, am I going to be caught up in another forever war? Now, this time we have.
Oh, what's that?
No. So I'd be really pissed off right now. I'm worried for my friends that are out there, my sailors, my Marines, my friends in the Army and the Air Force and the Space Force. And this time we've got no friends. We've got no allies. We've got no cover, legally or militarily.
Let me ask you about this, because the president was very explicit that we are at war. He used the word war. What is the role of Congress, and how does that statement by the president this morning trigger laws that require congressional approval?
Right. He says we're in an actual war, right? This is not a one and done. This is an actual war. And in order to promote war, the United States has a constitution that says that Congress is the one that authorizes war. The authorization to use military force is a congressional authorized power for checks and balances purposes for democracy. This is we live in a democratic society. This is not the way democracies go to war.
Jeff, I want to ask you, because I know you've been watching the way our press, which has cheerled us into war, my lifetime, many times, not the least of which was the Iraq war debacle that lasted 20 years. it's not just Fox News, which strangely I thought had their morning weekday anchors come in this morning. And I thought that was fascinating because I know those anchors. Brian Kilmeade lives on Long Island. He doesn't live around the corner from the studio, and yet they somehow knew to come in this morning. You need to come in hours before you host a show. So do they have a heads up? What do you think?
First, I want to say, Jaclyn, it's so good to hear the direct, incisive, concise summary of a former JAG officer. I think you hammered the nail exactly right. So I woke up earlier than Michelle did to thinking, oh, it's another Morning Joe rerun on the weekend. And in fact, it said live, and it wasn't lying because he had his suit on, and Willie had his suit on, and Mika was there in finest weekday attire. And Joe said, and I quote, in my conversation with the president yesterday afternoon, though, he said the next 2 weeks would be very interesting. So number one, Scarborough keeps talking to Trump more than we know constantly. Number two, it's fairly obvious to me that they had the tip-off. They knew what was going to happen. They were ready to come on this morning, so they were on for 2 hours. And Joe kept going on trying to brag about his conversation with Trump. He said, sorry, I'm just going to get the thread up here. He said, it certainly seems from my talk with the president yesterday, he was not interested in the niceties of the nuclear negotiations or the missile negotiations. He declared that the Iranian leaders were bad people. How's that for an incisive analysis? And my theory here is that the problem was that the negotiations were about to bring fruit, that they were going to pay off, that there were going to be some agreement, perhaps. And he didn't want that. He wanted war. So he had to beat the negotiations to war. Then Morning Joe brings in, guess who? John Bolton.
Never met a war he didn't love.
Exactly, who said he called the war, he quote, the war of regime change in Iraq was a spectacular success. He claimed that the mistake with the best of intentions was regime building. And I quote, when we should have just given them the Iraqis copies of the Federalist Papers and said best of luck.
Oh my God.
And then meanwhile, over on Fox, I turned in briefly because you don't have to turn in for long to see what they're saying. And they said, and they had a guest on saying, quote, about the Shah, he was fantastic. He was great. So this is the elementary, simplistic media analysis we have going on. One other thing, just real quickly to say, I think that MS Now sees an opportunity to seize on a war, which has been CNN's territory, and now the CNN is about to get kneecapped by the Ellisons and Barry Weiss. But if that were the case, if MS Now said, okay, here's our position in the world, here's our alternative view, the person they should have woken up was Rachel Maddow. But instead, they woke up the Trump pal.
Yeah. I want to just say something before we get to this about the Shah. The Shah was better than what we have today in that women were not repressed and, so on. However, in 1953, the CIA and British intelligence helped orchestrate the overthrow of Iran's democratically elected prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. And I bring this up because that was the first time we decided to engage in regime change in Iran, that time over oil, because he had nationalized the country's oil industry. And what we did was we restored the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, to the throne with strong American backing. And it is the Shah's growing dependence on American military and intelligence support, combined with his increasingly authoritarian rule and the repression carried out by secret police, that led many Iranians to see him as a Western puppet. Nobody wants to be, and that, of course, what followed was the rise of the 1979 revolution, which, Jeff, you and I were old enough to remember. And Jaclyn and Michelle, I'm not sure you guys were alive, but for some reason I actually was living in the Soviet Union. I remember my parents talking about it. What followed was his overthrow and the rise of the Ayatollahs. And of course, we know what happened then. 444 days of keeping American hostages in Iran. And of course, all the horrors that followed then. Direct result.
And the effect on the American election and all that has followed since then.
Yep.
Yes.
Exactly. Oh my God. Yes.
So,
yes.
so that was the last time we decided to engage in regime change. And that happened in 1953. And, 25 years later, the Iranian people said no mas and decided to put in the Ayatollahs. So we do not have a plan, friends. I want to be very clear here. There is no rationale for why we are at war. And I want to just cite, and I want to get your reaction on this, all of you, but especially Jaclyn, right? The president has said, he's given 3 rationales from what I can tell about why he's sending people to die in the Middle East. And he did say some people will die, but that's life. That's war. He did say that.
I have the whole statement, by the way. We should watch it.
Why don't you watch that statement and then we can go through it?
Yeah.
For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels in international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to Iraq, the regime has armed, trained, and funded terrorist militias that have soaked the earth with blood and guts. And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our citizens hostage. It was brutal, something like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We are going to annihilate their Navy. We are going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world. To the members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard.
I just want to pause that for a second. This is sped up so that we, I grabbed this from Twitter. It's sped up so we don't have to sit here for 10 minutes listening to him talk. So just to give everybody some context here. Yes, he spoke much slower. So
the armed forces and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity, or in the alternative, face certain death. So, lay down your arms, you will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered, don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside, bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all.
Can I just say something really quick here? These speeches, which I'm assuming was written by Stephen Miller. It is, and I don't mean to make light of this, but it really is like somebody in 5th grade was asked to write a 500-word essay, and they only came up with 400 words. And so they have to add all these extra words that don't belong there to make it 500 words. And like, that's always what these speeches are like. And they're way too hyperbolic and like weird and like kind of violent, like war porn. Like he was doing that during the State of the Union too, like blood and guts and using it's really inappropriate. And again, like I just to remind people, I mean, I don't really need to, but we all know here, he is a 5-time draft dodger and he is there telling other people what war is like he has any idea.
Well,
let's also add the hat.
Oh my God, so inappropriate.
Undignified to launch into killing people and launch a war on another nation wearing a jingoistic hat.
I want to just say that at least 63 people, all of them young girls, were killed in an airstrike in a city called Manab in the southern Hormozgan. And I apologize to people who know these regions better than I do in Iran, but it's the southern Hormozgan province. Little girls who were in school were murdered by us. For what? And I want to talk about for what, because the president over the last, and this is what I want to get your reaction to, Jaclyn, the president laid out, not just in the speech today, but over the last few days, especially the State of the Union, it seems like there are three reasons that he's hinted at for why we're doing this. One is that Iran has restarted its nuclear program. The second is that Iran has enough available material to build a nuclear bomb within days. And the third is that Iran is developing long-range missiles that will be able to reach the United States. I want to just be very clear before I get your reaction, Jaclyn. All three of these excuses are complete and utter bullshit. I mean, it's not even that it's debatable. It's just a lie. So, Jaclyn, again, I want to just say, because you actually put your life on the line to serve, I can't even imagine the reaction of people who are now asked to deploy to the Middle East without being given a rationale as to why, based on what are three complete and utter bullshit reasons.
I'm pretty pissed off right now. My blood's kind of boiling, right? We talk about the rule of law in democracies, and we talk about the UN Charter and how the UN was developed after World War II. And the primary rule of the UN is Article 2, subparagraph 4, which says, "Thou shalt not use force or the threat of the use of force to settle international disputes. Thou shalt use diplomatic solutions," right? So that we don't have another world war. That's the primary purpose of the UN. And then we've got our Constitution that says, we have a separation of powers. We have three branches of government. We have a checks and balances. We have Congress being authorized, to wage war, right? And we have the president as the commander in chief to use very isolated, specific uses of the military. We've got the UN with the charter, Article 37 of the UN Charter, having specific UN Security Council resolutions to gain allies and support and use intelligence, and the U.S. Constitution to talk to the American people, to gather the information, to speak to the world, to speak to the American people, to gain support, to use military force in a justified manner by the use of laws, international and domestic laws, right, with allies, to justify the use of military force to go in and to hold people accountable. We don't have any of that right now. We are a rogue state violating our own Constitution, violating the UN Charter, with no allies, with not enough ammunitions. We are sitting ducks, putting our United States military forces in jeopardy all around the coast of Iran, on the water, and military forces in the area on bases where Iran can strike, with no allies but for Israel. And for what? For regime change? Have we learned our lesson? Have we learned our lesson from Vietnam, from Afghanistan, from Iraq? The first time, the second time, the third time, people have put their lives on the line, and we have seen that the American military force is one of the most mightiest forces, the most mightiest force on earth. But we do not do well in regime change. And for us to try to impose regime change in the Middle East again, for the how many times, and to sacrifice people's lives, United States military service members' lives for this, and civilian lives. How many civilians are going to die because of this? And we have no plan, no political plan in place. And just like before, I mean, you could look at the problems that we've had in the past. I mean, I'll criticize Obama with Gaddafi and Libya, right? The people have risen. We didn't have a plan for that either. Every time we've used our military force for what we think is good, we have no political plan for the future. And how do we implement some type of government force, right, to rule the people afterwards? We failed. We've done it for 20 years in Afghanistan. We've done it for 20 years in Iraq, and we're in the same places that we were 20 years ago. The Taliban are still in place, and Iran and Iraq is a failed state, and people have died because of it. And now we're a rogue state. We've lost all this treasure and capital and money and people and resources and allies, and we're stuck in the same place that we were 20 years ago. And people are going to die again, and we've just exhausted all of our capital again, and for nothing. And I'm pretty pissed off right now that we've become a rogue state, and we've become exactly what we've tried to fight against. And I've raised my hand to support and defend the Constitution and the rule of law, and now we are the oxymorons of the world. And I'm pissed off right now. Sorry.
I want to know, you should be sorry. You have every right to be pissed off because you actually put your life on the line, unlike Donald Trump and others who are waging this war. One of the people who joined the military was, I believe also JAG officer Jaclyn, is our Vice President J.D. Vance. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a op-ed in the Wall Street Journal on January 31st, 2023. And the headline of this op-ed is the following: Trump's best foreign policy, not starting any wars. He has my support in 2024 because I know he won't recklessly send Americans to fight overseas. I want to just read just one paragraph from this because I think it's important. This is what J.D. Vance said. Bipartisan foreign policy consensus has led the country astray many times. Leadership in both parties supported the invasion of Iraq, the decades-long nation-building project in Afghanistan, regime change in Libya, and guerrilla war in Syria. All of these policies cost a lot of money and killed many. None of those complexes served the nation's long-term interests. Very few were ever willingly challenged by a leader of national significance. That is, of course, until Donald Trump came along. And then he says, to my fellow Republicans, Mr. Trump lowered taxes and worked hard to deregulate the federal bureaucracy, blah, blah, blah. My entire adult life has been shaped by presidents who threw America into unwise wars and failed to win them. I had just started high school when George W. Bush was elected president. His presidency is the first I remember with any detail. Mr. Bush allowed a just war in Afghanistan to turn into a nation-building quagmire and then started an unjust war in Iraq. His successor, Barack Obama, doubled down on nation-building in Afghanistan and launched a new war of his own in Libya with the enthusiastic support of then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And then he talks about how Donald Trump, in his 4 years in office, started no wars despite enormous pressure from his own party and even members of his own administration. Not starting wars is a low bar, but that's a reflection of the hawkishness of Mr. Trump's predecessors and the foreign policy establishment they slavishly followed. Jeff. We are, and by the way, Jaclyn, I think he just echoed everything you said, or you just echoed everything J.D. Vance said in that op-ed, which is fascinating, ironically. Tulsi Gabbard talked consistently about her support for Trump, couched in very similar terms that we just heard about from J.D. Vance. And I think she probably would agree with a lot of what you said, Jaclyn, or at least she would have before she decided to sell her soul to Vladimir Putin more than Trump, but nevertheless. Jeff, do you have the sense, because I do, that we have a media that is once again going to cheerlead us into war because they don't want to be portrayed as being anti-American or unpatriotic? I mean, you see this happening at Fox for sure. You see this happening at MS Now with Morning Joe. You're absolutely right. They had a choice of whom to put on air, and they chose to put Joe Scarborough on, who also never met a war he did not support. I don't know what's happening at CNN, but it doesn't matter because Barry Weiss is about to take over, and she, of course, is does the bidding of the Netanyahu regime. Not a regime, they were duly elected with the Netanyahu government. So, of course, she'll be cheerleading this, and CNN will be too in due time, and probably in anticipation for taking over. The anchors there to curry favor and protect their jobs will be cheerleading it even before she comes on board. Thoughts, comments, complaints?
So first, I want to circle back to something you said earlier, Julie, because it really struck me about the girls' school being bombed. Is that the victims of this on both ends are girls, from the effort to distract from Epstein to killing young girls in a school. And
Always.
Let's note the gendered nature of this attack by Trump and company. Second, just yesterday, I said the New York Times, I screenshotted their, if that's a verb, their homepage and said that they're itching for war. And today, if you look at the Times right now, it has a big banner of U.S. and Israel attack Iran, and then in the literal fine print, in the bullets to the left to their blog, the second bullet is Trump's case for striking Iran rests on questionable claims. It's the Times trying to cover their asses after Iraq and WMDs. This is a repeat of WMDs. And yes, I think media will be, their reflex is, if we're at war, we've got to be with our troops and with our country, and we don't want to be questioned and be disloyal. So I think, given that half the media is now owned by Hungarian-like Trump forces, and the other media is scared and prevaricating, that's where they're going to find ourselves. If I may, I'd like to ask Jaclyn a question. Mindful of the 6 members of Congress who made the video reminding members of the service that they should not follow unlawful orders. And you've been quite eloquent about the unconstitutionality and illegality of what's happening right now. If you're a bomber pilot, if you're the person striking the missile, and what do you do? What obligation do you have? What responsibility do you have? What protection do you have? How do you deal with this if you're in the service and you came in many years ago when it wasn't this certain circumstance? What would you advise someone now?
I honestly think it needs to be coming from somebody with some agency, with some stars on their shoulders.
Yeah.
Somebody that is a pilot, that's a field grade officer that's been in for 8, 10, 12 years, 15 years. They're going to be locked up, thrown in purgatory, and court-martialed or administratively separated. And, they're going to go down as the sacrificial lamb. Somebody with some agency, with that's a general officer or admiral that is retirement eligible, that has some authority within this administration, that can speak up, is the one that's going to be able to make some change. And I don't mean just retiring. That's the cop out. That's the easy way out. I mean actually standing up and saying this is wrong and I'm not going to do it. That is what is necessary at this point. Somebody
if that colonel, that rank general came out and said that, they're obviously at risk for what you just said, being thrown in the brig. Are they at risk for being charged with desertion under fire or such?
I think it's going to be left to the courts at that point.
But it's military courts. So explain the difference of what would happen in military court versus civilian court.
The military court, it would be the judge. The military judge would be the one that would make the decision on whether because this is a question of law, on whether that order is a lawful order. And so it's up to the military to decide whether they want to take that general to a court martial, or they can try to administratively separate him through a board of inquiry. And through a board of inquiry, the burden of proof is by preponderance of the evidence, which is 51%, and it's administrative in nature. So the rules of evidence don't apply, and it's a lot easier to separate somebody through administrative separation procedures. So even if some general or admiral decides that they don't want to follow this order because they think it is unlawful, they might not even have their day in court. They may be separated administratively instead. So it would be the court of public opinion that they would have to fight for, and make this, something in the media. They would, and that's why I say that it would have to be a general or an admiral, because they would have the moxie and they would have the firepower to make this a public fight.
One more question.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I just had a follow up.
Just one more follow up question. Ultimately, does Hegseth have the power to be able to determine what happens in this case, or is the court sufficiently independent? And I might mention that Hegseth just decreed that the Boy Scouts are allowed to keep girls for a little bit, but they have to get rid of DEI. I said on the socials today that it's the Hegseth Jugend now. This is the guy who's in charge. How much power and authority would he have in such a case of someone dissenting from an order?
Yeah, I think he can direct a commander to convene. I think convene a court martial, but then you've got the problem of unlawful command influence as well. And I've actually filed an unlawful command influence against the Commandant of the Marine Corps and won that case on appeal, and it got overturned at the Navy Marine Corps Court of Criminal Appeals. So even if he directs a commander to convene a court martial and find this guy guilty or this gal guilty, I think you still got issues with the conduct of the court martial and deciding beforehand that predetermined the guilt or innocence, and in this case, the guilt of the accused. And you've got issues under the Uniform Code of Military Justice on unlawful command influence as well.
Thank you. That's really informative.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about that, Jaclyn? We are right now, from what I can tell, it's an illegal war in the sense that Congress does not authorize any war powers. If that's the case, do you have? I mean, what are the odds of somebody getting court-martialed for refusing to follow orders related to an illegal war, or do they have to just obey the commander-in-chief, irrespective of whether this is a legal action or not?
They can refuse, and then they would be set aside administratively, put on some type of leave, or sent to hand out basketballs and towels at the local MWR gym. And then it really is up to the commander on whether they want to take the Marine or sailor to a court martial. It's really within the commander's decision-making process on taking the guy to a court martial or the Marine to a court martial, or taking him to administrative separation, or not doing anything. So it's all within the military commander's jurisdiction. And that's what's different between military justice and civilian justice, is that you're talking about an executive court system. You're not talking about a completely separate judicial court system. So you've got a court system that's not completely separate and independent. It's still within the executive branch.
I wanted you said something about the court of public opinion, and I think that matters just holistically here, and because I'd like to talk about like the political implications here as well, because first of all over Twitter today, are retweets, or at least this morning, of previous tweets, because there's always a tweet. Donald Trump in 2013, right? He says, "Remember that I predicted a long time ago that President Obama will attack Iran because of his inability to negotiate properly, not skilled." Stephen Miller, November 1st, 2024. "To anyone still gullible enough to fall for scummy media hoaxes, Trump said warmongering neocons love sending your kids to die for wars they would never fight themselves. Liz Cheney is Kamala's top advisor. Liz wants to invade the whole Middle East. Kamala equals World War III. Trump equals peace." And I've got my hold on. I've got my laptop here set up as well. That I'd like to show this. Hold on. There we go. It's everywhere. I mean, the hypocrisy, not that anybody cares about hypocrisy anymore or at all. But yeah, I mean, all of these people, Tulsi Gabbard talking about, a vote to end wars. My whole feed is this right now. And I think also important here, Jonathan Karl said this morning that he spoke to Tucker Carlson, and there is a divide in MAGA, which we saw the last time that this happened. Tucker Carlson told Jonathan Karl this morning that the attack on Iran is, quote, absolutely disgusting and evil. So I know we've talked about, how the media is covering this. We talked a bit about, a lot about the military and the legal implications and how illegal this is. But I think as Americans, I can't imagine that the country is going to support this. I mean, the court of public opinion is going to be,
from both sides.
They're not going to win this. They're not going to win this because, I mean, after being dragged through the 20-year war wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, we've got the boomers who were dragged through Vietnam, especially the working class, like older boomers who've seen this before, like we're not doing this, and everything in between. And this country, it has been through hell with Donald Trump for the last 10 years, traumatized over and over and over again, maybe not even if politically, but economically. I just can't imagine a place and time where the public is going to support this. And MAGA, I mean, this is going to be a big problem for the Republicans, and this is going to be a big problem for Donald Trump going into 2026. And this is why he is doing everything in his power to rig the election, to call for, a national emergency so that he can take over and seize control of the elections and our voting machines. I mean, Tim Snyder tweeted out something or posted something this morning too about, this is what authoritarians do. This is like the last step of authoritarianism, to wage war and get the support of the people, except Donald Trump's not doing that. And he's screwing this up in every way possible. He's not good at this, which I guess is a good thing for us, sort of, but not. I mean, the whole thing is a disaster. But this is not going to be good for the Republicans going forward. And this is where MAGA 2.0 is going to take over the base, and it's going to be America First. Is going to be MAGA 2.0, and it's going to be the Tucker Carlsons, who I absolutely think is going to run for president in 2028. And it's going to be, it's going to be Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's going to be the Nick Fuentes party that is anti-Israel, anti-war, America First, isolationist, and of course, super anti-Semitic and racist and all the other things. But so just like going from there, I mean, Julie, like politically, like what do you see here?
Well, look, I can speak to Tucker directly because Tucker, for a very, very, very long time, I mean, I used to have these conversations with him, opposed. He first cheerled the war in Iraq, but legitimately he was horrified by it after several years. And that's not a posture. That's not an act. The person who I think is in a very tough spot is J.D. Vance, because J.D. Vance built his whole career on siding up to the Tucker Carlson wing of the party on every level. And, to the extent that this is going to be a Rubio-Vance proxy fight, Rubio was always going to be the neocon. Vance was always going to be the America Firster. You can't be that today. So to some extent, I think this ended the political aspirations of J.D. Vance. For that
was it? Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
Being mansplaining that I am, sorry, apologies for doing so. But I want to right on that, because I think it's a really important insight. J.D. Vance was getting involved in the negotiations. The negotiations seemed to be going well.
Yes.
Was this also an attack, a way to kneecap J.D. Vance?
I think so. I don't think Trump likes J.D. Vance. I don't think that's J.D. Vance.
J.D. Vance was imposed upon him.
He was imposed upon him by Peter Thiel and others who put God knows how much money into his PACs and probably an equivalent amount into his crypto fund.
Yeah, and as an aside, Marco Rubio was kind of imposed into this by Susie Wiles, because that was Susie Wiles' guy.
Right.
And again, like I saw something with Anthony Scaramucci the other day where he's like, listen, it's not J.D. Vance, it's not Marco Rubio going forward. Trump collects people and he eats his young. He's not going to allow that. He's not going to. Sorry, Julie, continue.
Well, Trump talked yesterday, knowing this was coming, about how he deserves a third term because the second one was stolen from him. I want to put this in a larger context, guys, because I think it's really important. And I don't see anybody else doing this, but I think it's really, really critical that we put this in a much larger context. The Washington Post broke a story on Thursday. And again, we talked about this yesterday on our show, Jeff, how the media is so busy covering Savannah Guthrie's mother that they're not covering this. Again, there is a circulating draft executive order that would declare a national emergency over alleged foreign interference in U.S. elections. This interference was attributed to China. Today, in a statement, Trump said that Iran tried to interfere to defeat him in 2020, 2024. Okay? This order would attempt to assert sweeping presidential authority over how federal elections are conducted, right? They would propose a declared national emergency. They would ban mail-in votings and electronic voting machines because they would be treated as potential channels for foreign interference. And in their place, you would have exclusively hand-marked paper ballots that would be counted manually. Counted by whom, you might ask? Well, you tell me who controls the Board of Elections in places like Georgia, right?
Right.
It would also require Americans to re-register ahead of the 2026 midterms. All of us, this time by presenting documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. So if you do not have a passport, friends, you're SOL.
Mm-hmm.
Again, mail-in voting would be sharply curtailed, permitted only in narrowly defined circumstances, which would mean that seniors who lately have been trending more Democratic would be a lot harder for them because and people who are disabled. Anyway, the point is, it would also expand the role of federal agencies in policing voter eligibility. And again, which agencies, you might ask, does this draft proposal want to be involved in this? The Justice Department, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, otherwise known as ICE, Social Security Administration, and even the Postal Service. So, friends, Pam Bondi, Tom Homan, Kristi Noem, and whoever runs the Postal Service was a Trump appointee.
Mm-hmm.
You can't separate that news on Thursday from what is happening 48 hours later.
Absolutely.
And nobody is talking about this. Nobody is talking about this. And he said specifically that Iran interfered in the 2024 elections.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, to safeguard against foreign Iranian interference, we have to A, go to war in Iran, but B, I must be allowed as a matter of national security to take over the elections. And when it's a matter of national security, the judiciary tends to defer to the executive.
Especially this judiciary, but generally, right? It's a national security issue. The executive is in charge of national security, keeping the homeland safe.
Mm-hmm.
This is the definition of authoritarianism. This is the definition of, forget Orban in Hungary, this is Putin level shit.
Mm-hmm. This is Reichstag time.
This is Reichstag level shit. This is burning down the Reichstag, blowing up those apartment buildings outside Moscow in order to assert executive power. Putin did that by going to war against Chechnya. Donald Trump is doing that by first trying to take out Maduro. Okay, fine. That was more of a grab for Sigo and for Singer and all of his other donors. This is much more. This is national security. And the courts defer on national security. Jaclyn, I would love to hear your thoughts on this as the military lawyer on the show.
Yeah, he knows that if he invokes the national security rules, that the courts are going to defer to him as the executor, as the commander in chief, and give him that autonomy and that power. So he's trying to conflate the two in a way that I'm doing this for national security purposes, and therefore I have the authority to do it. But you're right, Julie, in that the two relate to each other, but he's not saying it because it's so true. I mean, one thing does lead to the other, right? The war now in Iran is directly related to national security in the United States. And therefore now he wants to take over the elections and make them federal because he knows that he's not going to win the elections if there is a fair and free election.
Exactly.
So he's using national security, right, to guard the elections, to make sure that they're fair and free, knowing damn well that he's not going to win under fair and free elections, so that he can continue to control the government. It all makes sense to me. I'm just not sure the rest of the American people are going to jump to those causations.
Well, no, we have to talk about it. And the part, Jeff, that pisses me off to no end, and why, why one of the, we started Mayday as a culture show, which is what today was supposed to be, but sadly life interferes. But what pisses me off and why I insisted, and Michelle insisted, that the show today be turned over to this topic and not what we originally wanted to talk about, in addition to the fact that it's obviously breaking news, is that you will not see that kind of analysis coming from our mainstream media. And it's not because we're so brilliant, and it's not because we have some sort of insight or intelligence that nobody else has. It is because apparently CNN has decided that doing A block, B block, E block on Savannah Guthrie's mother is what people want to see, as opposed to their democracy being eradicated. It is because MS Now decided that they want to hear from Joe Scarborough because he talks to Donald Trump and nobody else there apparently does. And so therefore he has some sort of unique analysis and unique perspective because he has spoken to the president. There is nothing Joe Scarborough is hearing from Donald Trump that the rest of us are not hearing from Donald Trump, because Donald Trump doesn't have an inside voice.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, you don't need to call Donald Trump Joe Scarborough and get some, what are you hearing that the rest of us wouldn't have heard at 3:00 this morning?
To which I point people, again, this is where creative content here, I think, can be very, very helpful in this moment, which is something that I do and have done. I did it at Lincoln. I did it at Seneca Project, which I co-founded, and I'm trying to do it here if I have enough hours in the day. But like, the receipts here are really important. And this is why just putting clips together through time, even just holding Joe Scarborough's feet to the fire. Like, I made a video for us of just Joe Scarborough excusing his connection to Donald Trump for 3 minutes. And I could, again, extend this into 4 or 5 minutes now, because this is what he does. You can do the same thing with President Peace. I'm the peace, I'm the peace, I'm the peace. And you just brought up CNN. I want to show this, what happened. I believe, I forget where she was, but let me just play this here. Come on.
I'm Becky Anderson in Abu Dhabi with the alarms going off here, suggesting we should seek immediate shelter in the closest source. So we'll do that. Our breaking news coverage continues after this short break. Stay with us.
So in the middle of a broadcast, one of the CNN reporters is being evacuated. Yeah, is being evacuated. What happens to all of their foreign correspondents? I mean, we talked about this a bit yesterday too, but in a moment like this, when the serious stuff's really happening, where do we go?
Well,
CNN, because they have the best coverage around the world.
But I'll tell you, somebody who had to watch CNN during the last Iran war, because I was in the middle of it in Tel Aviv. To CNN's credit, they got Anderson Cooper to Tel Aviv immediately, whatever. But more relevantly, we got Clarissa Ward to Tel Aviv immediately. I think she came in through Egypt. He came in through Jordan. But the point is, it was very, very, very hard to get into Israel because all flights were canceled and it was just, airspace was closed. So if you had to leave or you had to get there, you had to go through either Jordan or Egypt and go overland at the border crossings, which is, it's all right there. But the point is, they did. But what I watched in Tel Aviv was CNN, American CNN, not Becky Anderson in Abu Dhabi, who, by the way, I think does a very good job generally. It has a crazy off-topic, but maybe not, interview that she did with Ghislaine Maxwell many years ago that just surfaced about Ghislaine Maxwell wanting to make oceans something that people had passports to. It was a very, very weird situation. We'll talk to another time. I say all of this to say that CNN, even less than a year ago, 9 months ago, had extremely good reporting on under very similar circumstances. What I fear now, and what I think is happening now, and Jeff, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is that even before Barry Weiss takes over, and she will be taking over in the next 6 months, people who want to keep their jobs at CNN will start to take positions that are very aligned, not with where the Israeli people are, but with where Benjamin Netanyahu is, who has been begging for regime change in Iran, agitating for it for decades. And I want to be very clear again, and I say this again, I don't want to hear in the chat about AIPAC. I don't want to hear again about, but this is about Netanyahu specifically. This is a man on borrowed time politically. He is under indictment. There is an election that will be held later this year at the latest. His coalition would not necessarily hold. The people hate him. They protest against him all the time. This is a potentially successful Hail Mary pass by Netanyahu to stay in office, because he will be able to go back to his people and he will be able to say, I am the only prime minister who could have gotten rid of Hamas in Gaza, gotten rid of Hezbollah in Lebanon, and gotten rid of the Iranian threat, which I have been conditioning you to believe is imminent every day. I was able to work in the United States to do it. Nobody else can do it but me. You need to keep me in. And by the way, it's a great argument, because he's not wrong. He's a monster.
Yeah, I mean,
on this particular subject, it's a great political argument. And the problem here is that we are effectively interfering. You want to talk about regime change in Iran? We're also interfering in Israel's politics by doing this.
Right.
The only reason I could think that we're doing this, besides Trump getting a sorry dad a hard on because he gets to deploy a bunch of missiles, and God knows, who's depositing money into his crypto account to make him do this, whether it's Miriam Adelson or somebody else. But part of this, and a big part of this, I think, is also as a Benjamin Netanyahu reelection campaign effort. Thoughts, comments, anything?
I think you raise a really important point to keep in mind with Barry Weiss and the Ellisons and the Trump allies, that they're loyal not just to Trump, they're loyal to Netanyahu, because it's synonymous.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important in this case. I also think, Julie, you're begging for the chance to have dissent to this, and to hear that dissent and to hear that discussion that Jaclyn's talked about in the court of public opinion. And I don't know where we're going to hear it except in independent media like this. We're not going to hear it in the media that's already been taken over. If you weren't already banned from CNN, Julie, you're off now. That's for certain. You're on the no list.
Yeah,
and at MS Now, come weekday evenings, yes, we'll hear some, but look what happens in the mornings there. It's bipolar in that sense, politically bipolar, I mean. And I'm as we're talking, I'm looking around the world, and I'm kind of shocked. So Die Zeit, which is a very smart, reasonable German publication, the headline right now is, to translate, risky but right. Der Spiegel, in Iran, they waver between fear of death and hope for liberation.
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah.
That pulls up it also pulls up the kind of Trump view. In the FAZ, Trump wants to go down in history.
He will.
So the way the Murdoch's Times of London positions this is that U.S. and Israel strikes target Iran's supreme leader. It's not just about going to war with Iran. He did, but I'm saying that's the
framing.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't see much that I can hang a perspective on either Haaretz on the one side or the Jerusalem Post on the other. But even the international media, which I would hope would be here being cautious. I don't know. We have the Prime Minister of Canada already giving support. I don't know what he said, but I just saw the Prime Minister of England on CNN over to the side, and all I could see was the lower third saying British planes are in the air. So I don't know what that means. I'm not finding headlines about it yet. So I don't know where the dissent comes from. Oddly, this is as Jaclyn has said again and again, we are a rogue state. This is an illegal war. Surely there'd be more of an outcry that would be hearing at this point, and I'm bereft.
Is that? I
looking
mean,
for that.
This is where I ask, like, is my support there out of fear of the United States? Like, pulling us into World War III or a nuclear conflict or something like that? I mean, or do they truly support this and think it's not a bad thing? And this is, listen, it's complicated, right? The Iranian regime has funded Hamas, Hezbollah. I mean, they're awful people. They just murdered 30,000 protesters in the last few weeks in Iran. And that cannot be left out of the equation, unfortunately. And that's where Trump gets away with this stuff, because the bad guy is the bad guy, right? But the way that we're going about this, the fact that we're doing it at all, we're doing it without allies. It's illegal. I mean, everything about this is wrong. But the bad guy is a common denominator for everybody.
Yes. Well, I will tell you my 2 cents about this.
Yeah.
Iran has funded a tremendous number of terrorist attacks against Europe. I mean, going back to the 80s consistently. Yeah. Literally since 1979, they have been the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. And a lot of those bombs have exploded in places like Europe and Argentina and other places. So the Europeans have no love for the Iranians. They still have relationships with them in the sense that they have embassies there, but they're not certainly, enamored with Iran. It's very convenient for Germany, which lives under threat of Iranian terror attacks, to have the United States fight their war for them, right? Like, what do they care? What do they care? Let us go in there and take out the Iranians.
Yeah.
And I think part of this is a situation where, like, great, let's have the United States fight for it. The difference is that this came about quite suddenly. Remember, the drumbeat up to the Iraq War was very long. Right. And I think I talked about this before, but I remember being in London just, in the run up to the Iraq War. And 2 interesting stories about that particular trip. One is there was a massive demonstration for people who are British. You probably remember this. Massive demonstration. I believe it ended at the Houses of Parliament in Westminster, but it went all the way up to Trafalgar Square, and I think even on to the Strand. Like, it was tens of thousands of people descended upon London to protest. And so when Tony Blair finally became Bush's poodle, it became very, very, very hard for him politically to absorb that, because the conditioning from his own people was that nobody wanted Britain to go to war. Here, it's easier in the sense that everybody's like, oh, what just happened? And by the time they wake up to what's going on, the leaders have already made their statements. They will come to regret it, by the way. Der Spiegel will come to regret it. The Times will never come to regret it because it's Murdoch. But I mean, all of these people will come to regret it. The second thing I want to say is, speaking of the Shah of Iran, I think I talked about this before. That same trip, I ended up at a party at the house of the grandson of the Shah of Iran. And I don't know if this is who they're talking about putting in there now, or his dad, or whoever the hell it is. But let me just tell you something. This guy was so fucking weird that I would be living in terror if he was in charge of anything. I mean, I think he truly was on the spectrum, and not to demean people who are on the spectrum, but I think he was like way, 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 way. Like, this is not somebody who should be in charge of people, because I don't think he had a. So I say all of this to say that was a very different time. This is a very quick, let's get this done time. And I think that's part of the problem. That's the political calculus. And what I cannot believe, and I cannot just, the New York Times, to their credit, Jeff, and I know we love beating up in the New York Times, but at least the New York Times had an op-ed this morning saying, what the hell? Like, what are we doing this for?
Right. Because it's the obvious question. Yeah.
It's the obvious question, right? Because they learned their lesson. They learned their lesson. Ish, from Judy Miller and others. I mean, nobody beat us into war more than New York Times did 25 years ago.
Can I bring another X factor into this?
Yes.
So, been a fascinating couple of days. I'm really eager to hear Jaclyn's perspective on this. Is Anthropic. Anthropic being beaten around the head by Hegseth, and in the end standing on principle and saying with only good sense that their tools should not be used for autonomous killing of people or for surveilling American citizens. And then Trump, as you know, yesterday, just before declaring war, ruled that Anthropic has to be thrown out of all government. I don't think they went so far as to declare it a security risk, such that others would have to as well. But that's bad enough for them. And then what happens?
Out in 6 months. In 6 months.
In 6 months, yeah. We'll hang on to it for a while, right?
Right.
And then what happens? I don't know if if you're all too young for this reference, but I put up a Nano Banana picture this morning of Sam Altman as Eddie Haskell. Do anybody of you know who Eddie Haskell was?
Of course.
Okay, I'm not. This is my age. For those of you who don't, he was a character on Leave It to Beaver who was a two-faced, ass-kissing creep and traitor.
You're looking beautiful, Mr. Flavor.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're looking handsome, Secretary Hegseth. So Sam Altman has turned around and he does the deal with Hegseth. And yes, we don't know what the exact details are, but Sam Altman is slime.
Oh,
so now we have, one way or the other, we have the Defense Department is also going to have Silicon Valley as a factor, right? Not just media, not just Israel, not just crazy maggots. Now I think we have to count Silicon Valley in as a political actor in a different way from 10 years ago when Google employees basically did a strike against Google technology being used in defense.
Right.
And now I think it's going to turn all around, especially with the influence of Peter Thiel, now Sam Altman, and so on and so forth. So, Jaclyn, I'm wondering what you're just thinking about this now in terms of this notion of autonomous killing without human intervention, surveillance of American citizens, the use of technology. I don't have a question so much as I'd love to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of debating that question right now. And what do we do in an age where we've got machines that are actually very smart, and are they going to take over for the humans? And my answer is no, because humans, there's a human element in all decision making that machines can't replicate. Right? There's judgment, there's decision making, there's empathy, there's the thought process, there's the deliberation, there's there's so many different human elements out there that machines are not going to be able to replicate. And as many importance as much importance as machines can bring to the equation in their anticipation and their quickness and their analysis, they're not going to be able to duplicate the human element of decision making. And you still need humans to be able to run and make the final decision and the analysis on what is the right decision to make. I think machines can help in that process, but they're not going to be able to make the right decisions. You still need humans to be able to insert themselves into the decision-making process.
In a proper and sane military, I agree, but we don't have a proper and sane military leadership right now in Hegseth. Does he potentially hide behind the technology and say, I'm going to let it loose and I'm going to let it kill whoever it wants in Iraq? And, it's one matter to mistakenly bomb a school filled with girls. It's another matter to set out to let the technology make its own decisions. Do you think that he would do that? And again, would people in the command object in that circumstance?
I would hope that the people in the command would object, because we're talking about life and death. We're talking about the rules of engagement. We're talking about international law, and we're talking about their authority. And somebody needs to be held accountable for it. And you can't hold machines accountable. At the end of the day, somebody needs to, make the decision on whether to wage war, whether to pull the trigger, who's going to do the LOAC analysis. Machines can't do that LOAC analysis. They can provide input, and they could spit out an analysis as to, what the LOAC analysis looks like. But at the end of the day, people need to be the ones that make that final decision. And Hegseth can't just defer to the machine to make that decision. That's idiotic. I can't see that happening.
I wanted to just bring up that in January of 1961, in his farewell address, President Eisenhower famously said, "Beware the military-industrial complex." And in January of 2025, in his farewell address, Joe Biden said, "Beware the tech-industrial complex." And I think that these two warnings have converged into one, because the military-industrial complex is not just companies making, tanks and chemicals and things, right, to attack our enemies. It is now nerds who couldn't get a prom date with billions of dollars who are out for themselves and nothing else, and they are moving fast and they are breaking things, and they do not care, nor do they see the consequences in front of them. And it's just more and more and more and more and more. And all of these things are converging into one thing. And I think I remember watching I think it was like CBS News in the before times doing a story about AI drones in warfare, right? And we've seen, Ukraine using some of this technology in their war with Russia. But this stuff is scary. It can scan your faces. I mean, we're in a post-privacy world now. It's dangerous, it's scary, but for all of those reasons, tech is very much at the forefront of the military-industrial complex now. And I think that those two warnings really, they're chilling if you put them side by side.
Yep.
Just can't forget the human element of everything that we do.
Yeah.
I was like, we made a movie about this. It was called Terminator 2. And apparently no one took the lessons from this film, which, I mean, and that's the thing too. It's like, I mean, not understanding AI technology. I have a degree in theater. This is not something I certainly know about, but it's, at what point does AI become, an entity in survival mode and sees humans as the enemy and wants to protect itself? I mean, I don't know. It seems sci-fi, but it also seems incredibly plausible at this point.
I just sent you both a story. The Reza Pahlavi, the crown prince of Iran, the son of the Shah, who's the one who is not the grandson, but the son who is talked about as going there. He put out a video after the attack. Quote, "We are very close to final victory. I want to be by your side as soon as possible so that together we can take back and rebuild Iran. In these sensitive hours and days, more than ever, we must stay focused on our ultimate goal, reclaiming Iran. I ask you to remain in your homes for now and preserve your safety and security. Stay vigilant and ready to do so that at the appropriate time, which I will announce to you precisely, you can return to the streets for the final action."
To which I just want to throw this tweet up from Judd Legum. I'm having a hard there we go. Judd Legum said, "This is 5 hours ago. Just a reminder, instead of an actual diplomat, we sent Trump's deeply compromised son-in-law as the lead negotiator to avoid war with Iran." And here we are. So.
Okay, I want to be very clear about something. One is people are clamoring for the return of the Shah's family, like they're clamoring for the return of the Romanovs in Russia. Translation. Nobody wants the Habsburgs back in Austria. Nobody wants the Hohenzollerns back in Berlin. Nobody wants the Romanovs or, nobody wants the Bourbons back in Paris, and nobody wants the Shah back in Iran. Nobody, because that guy was a nightmare. That's one. He was not as bad of a nightmare as what's there now, but he was still shitty and awful.
And the genes dilute.
Yeah. So, and nobody wants his gene pool back there. So that's one. Two, I always thought that Israel was a great prognosticator of what happens in the United States. Like they're always, and I think Tom Friedman made this point also consistently, but like they're always kind of showing us what our future is. It's very weird because they're a very small country, but for some reason every time Bibi anticipated Trump, Bibi's behavior with the judiciary anticipated what Trump is trying to do. Like all of it is interesting. I want to just talk about what's going on in Israel now statistically, because you brought up Anthropic and you brought up AI, and I want to just talk about this. 230,000 Israelis, and again, this is a tiny, tiny country, so this is an astronomical amount for them, left from 2023 through 2025. They emigrated, not immigrated in, but emigrated out. The number of Israelis canceling their residency quadrupled.
Wow.
Nearly 48% of those leaving are aged 20 to 45, and 27% are children or teenagers, indicating that entire families are relocating. Over 8,000 high-tech workers left between October 2023 and mid-2024 alone. High-wage earners now make up 1/3 of all immigrants, not immigrants, but again, immigrants, up from a quarter in previous years. 400 doctors have left in 2023 alone, specialists in STEM fields. In a 20-month period, over 600 PhD holders and 3,000 engineers moved abroad. 75% of those leaving are under 40, representing the core of Israel's future workforce and tax base. Then there's an article in the New York Times yesterday that the United States is seeing a massive emigration problem also, and people are leaving this country and moving to Europe or in other places, so much so that apparently if you go to Lisbon right now and you walk down certain neighborhoods, you hear English and American English much more than you hear Portuguese. Nobody wants to live under this bullshit. And people who have the means to get out, get out. We're witnessing a brain drain in Israel. We're witnessing a brain drain in the United States. That is a serious problem that will absolutely post-date Trump's departure. Once people immigrate, they do not come back for the most part. They put down, especially with kids, they put down roots. Their kids start speaking Portuguese or wherever they choose to move. They start raising their families in Portugal. They start attending Portuguese schools. I mean, using Portugal as one example. It could be anywhere else. Yeah. And all of a sudden you become Portuguese.
Well, and the fear, right, of knowing how fragile it is. And it's like, what if I go back, this happens again, they elect another nut job, I got to move again. Like, people aren't going to do that. You know, they're just not. And Julie, I think about you in this moment. Like, Julie, for anybody who doesn't know this here, is a refugee from the Soviet Union. And here you are in your 50s with a 13-year-old son, you know, thinking to yourself, oh my God, I never thought I would be.
I'd be out of here. I would have been out of here a year ago if my husband agreed to go. I mean, you know this, Michelle.
Yeah, I know. We talk about it.
It's not because I don't love this country. I love this country as only an immigrant can. But this country is not the country that we all believe in. And after the first time, I would have said, okay, people didn't know what they were getting into. But believe me, after 2024, it was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, you know, watching on election night in 2024, just watching the first returns come in. I think, what was the first state to come in? Virginia or North Carolina or something like that. And just watching county by county, Kamala Harris's numbers coming in like 2-3 points, you know, under Joe Biden. And I was like, oh shit, this is not good. This is not good. And I think you know, you lose faith in your fellow Americans, you know, walking down the street, wondering who did this and who didn't. I mean, it's a hard time to, you know, trust each other.
You guys, I have a little bit of a surprise, which is that I believe Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman is going to come on the show right now and talk about this. She is one of the big fighters in Congress about all of this. She and I were texting, which is why I was looking down at my phone. And I'm going to just send her a link to join us. And
yeah, I gotta figure out this layout here. Okay.
Yeah.
This is we're working, we're producing, we're doing things. And for anybody who doesn't know, Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, she is leaving. She'll be out there. Her seat is open, or will be open after her departure.
I'm going to get my charger before she comes because my computer's about to die. I'll be right back. Keep talking.
Okay. And we had her on the Mayday podcast a couple months ago. She is fantastic. She is one of the truth tellers in Congress. She's a fighter. She takes no shit from anyone. And I think she is just wonderful. I believe the 12th district. Jeff, you're New Jersey, right?
I was just trying to look that up. I was trying to remember which district
it is. Yeah, is it 12? I think it's 12.
It's 12th.
Yeah, 12. She's just, you know, fantastic. And a true example of what we should all be and what we should all be doing. And I just want to thank everybody. We have a lot of people watching here on YouTube. I haven't checked Substack, Julie's Substack, but there are quite a few people joining us today, and we're really grateful. If you're just joining us, we have Lieutenant Colonel Urso here with us, retired JAG officer from the United States Marine Corps, served for 20 years. We also have media critic and Professor Jeff Jarvis, who does the show with us on Fridays at 11 a.m. We hope you'll come back and watch that, where we talk about what the media is screwing up, and
we dissect the cadaver of mass media. Yesterday.
Exactly. So we have quite the panel here today with us, and we're so grateful for everybody to join us.
And while we wait for Congresswoman Watson Coleman, hopefully she'll be on. I want to say this, and this is what I want to talk to her about if she comes on. Congress is going back in on Wednesday, and they're leaving on Thursday.
Mm-hmm. And the last Mike Johnson, what do you think about this? And he was like, "Oh, I haven't really watched."
Yeah, the speaker is not even considering calling Congress back in to vote on a war powers resolution.
No way. No way.
Which would probably pass.
Because they were supposed to vote on this week anyway, right? Yep.
But enough members of Congress, absolutely would vote for it, even on the Democratic side, because there's always, you can always count on the Democrats to, do the wrong thing when national security matters are at stake. I guess nobody learned their lesson from how much Hillary Clinton got grief when she ran against Barack Obama in 2008 because she had voted.
Yeah. You mean Hillary? I mean, my God.
Yeah. I guess they haven't. John Fetterman is salivating on social media about this.
Oh my God. Yes. He was like, God bless America. Thank you, President Trump. The Defense Department, which I refuse to call it this stupid name, Operation Epic Fury is what they're calling this, because here's the other part of this too. People, I know I sometimes have to remind myself who's in charge. Donald Trump is P.T. Barnum. P.T. Barnum is running the United States government right now, and this is all a show. For as much as we make jokes in comparison to Wag the Dog obviously was a satirical film about going to war to avoid controversy. This is what he's doing also. The Epstein stuff is getting closer and closer and closer to him. The noose is tightening, and we are not letting up. The survivors are not letting up. There's members of the Republican Party are not letting up. The MAGA base, the podcast bros on the right are furious. And this is more fracture in the party for, as hopeless as it does seem sometimes that the Republican Party is going to part ways with Donald Trump. It is happening. People are starting to see, oh shit, we've been lied to. This is bullshit.
Okay. Congresswoman Watson Coleman, I think, is here. She said she's backstage. Okay. Do you see her?
I
do not see her.
No, she's not here. No. She's not here. Did you perhaps give her the link to the other recording?
I might have given her the wrong link. Hold on.
Okay, I'm going to text it to you right here. There you go.
We love StreamYard, but it can be confusing.
Yeah, very confusing.
It can be. It can, especially if you have several
since you guys have 87 shows a week,
yeah. Right. Although we have the morning show is on hiatus for now, so that we can focus on other programming like this and the Americans Rewatch podcast, which we are recording our first episode tomorrow. Jaclyn will be joining us to do that, and perhaps Jeff, maybe, we'll see. And that'll be great. So hopefully this new link will have worked. But yeah, this is all a show. It's all happening on TV. And as much as anything, Donald Trump likes good TV, and he likes good content, and he likes ratings. And a lot of this is part of that as well.
All right, let's bring Congresswoman Watson Coleman in here.
She's here. Waiting for her picture. Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I see her.
There she is.
Mm-hmm. There she is. Yeah. Yeah, she's waving. Okay.
Technology is so close.
Can you bring her in? Is she here?
Mm-hmm. Hold on. Let me just. Maybe
there she is. Hi, Congresswoman. Can you see us?
Hey, Julie.
Hi. I want to just introduce you to folks here.
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, you are here with Michelle Kinney, my co-host, who I know you've done this show before. You're here with Lieutenant Colonel Urso, who is a retired JAG Lieutenant Colonel officer from the Army. And you're here with our friend Jeff Jarvis, who is a media expert. And we're here talking about all of this. And we wanted to ask you your thoughts because you have been, I just want to put this in context for folks who may not know Congresswoman Watson Coleman. She represents the Narnia that is central New Jersey. She is also one of the biggest fighters in Congress on a whole host of issues. She is a true progressive, but more importantly, I know how strongly you feel, Congresswoman, about what is happening right now. And we wanted to just get your thoughts about everything that's gone on since 3 o'clock this morning.
So I was saying his last term and this term, and I don't remember being as sick to my stomach as I am right now. Mm-hmm. There have been some pretty horrible things that he's been engaged in. The fact that he and Netanyahu are front and center in this, the individuals who are trying very hard to just away from their failures, with corruption on any other level, and to disregard the health, safety of humans at their expense because they want to. It is scary. I don't know where the end lies here. Could you just remind me exactly why we're doing this today when we're so close to an agreement that Trump was touting the other day with Iran? There's no logical, reasonable, rational, righteous reason behind what he did today. It's scary. I believe it makes us weaker, more vulnerable, and
Congresswoman, you're going in and out. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's your internet or.
And I don't think what happened.
Can folks hear Congresswoman Watson Coleman?
Yeah, there's just a little bit of a delay. Yeah, that's all.
A little bit of a delayed. Okay. Congresswoman, are you ever going to vote on a war powers resolution here? Because the president said this morning there is a war. He said use the word war, and yet he doesn't have the authority to wage war. You do. What is going on over there?
Yeah, which is another illustration of his hands right now. That's going to get him in most trouble, I think. But if we don't vote on that resolution now, given up all of our authority, we've given up all of our opportunity to keep the faith, and to that we're not bullying our regions in this world. So if not now, I don't know. I know you asked me, do Johnson will call up the resolution? Any idea what Johnson will do, because Johnson does what he is told. So in this moment, I don't know if he would be told to do that. It would take some time for distribution and all that stuff. But I know that everybody that's listening to this podcast and everyone in the country watching stuff take place needs to be hollering out, impeach, get out of this office now, because you're gonna end being responsible for across the world. Kids that were in school in Iran, what did they do? How did they deserve this? But even in the United States of America, he's a dangerous, evil, wicked, corrupt leader. Let me take that word leader back. Position that would necessitate leadership.
I want to ask you about Democrats in Washington, because there are signs already that I guess if a word power, it's surprising to me that the speaker won't put up a word powers resolution, because it seems to me that it would pass, right? Also with Democratic support. And for the life of me, I don't understand where these people were 20 years ago, right? Like, we were all around for the first go around here in Iraq. We all understand how dangerous it was for Democrats who supported the war in Iraq, and how much they came to regret it. We talked about Hillary Clinton before you came on the show, where she voted for this war powers resolution and, of course, lived to regret it, as did virtually every Democrat who was there. I worked in the Senate in the lead up to that. I can tell you there were people who were agitating for it on our side of the aisle who, to ask any of them, would say they made a massive mistake. And yet you have people like John Fetterman and others who are apparently forgot what happened and are agitating for another war. What's the sense you get from, I know you can't speak for the Senate, but what's the sense you get from the House Democratic Caucus? Did Leader Jeffries call a meeting? Did he ask people to get on the phone to talk about it? What's going on with the Democrats down there?
Officially yet, because I haven't email, but I know that the wants to talk about this tomorrow. So, that's Probably going to time in the afternoon or early evening. I haven't, generally speaking, right? My colleagues don't Donald Trump to be allowed to go to war permission. Specifically, we haven't been there since Thursday. So I haven't really, other than, some chats that we have, I haven't to talk to a lot of them. But the ones that I am chatting, very much opposed to this war, very, very much war powers resolution brought up, are trying to figure out what's the best way for this disdain to be communicated. So what we have outlets like you, other folks who are willing to take on these issues from a righteous perspective. We're in the minority. Try to communicate as me.
Congresswoman, we have a delay going thanks to the
Yeah.
internet, so it's hard to see sometimes. If you think we're silent, it's just because we're waiting for a lag to happen.
Right. I don't know why you're a little delayed, Congresswoman. So we apologize for that. I guess the last question, and we'll let you get on with your day. From me, at least, if other people, other folks have questions, please jump in. Is what can we all do other than obviously we're talking about this here, but aside from emailing our members and emailing our senators, is there anything more that you think that we should be doing?
Just absolutely continue to do, and bring on many different voices. Our Congress having its role here, and who are concerned with what next this president can do. Right now, countries are being dragged to this because of what Donald Trump did, and he didn't have to do it. I think that anybody that's on your list needs to be encouraged to do that. And anytime anybody gets a chance to post against this, they need to on every platform that they're on. Because the will of the people has got to be demonstrated. To me, that's the only thing that Congress will react to, particularly being so close to primaries.
Yeah. I know, Congresswoman, and I promise I will let you go. You've been obviously very critical of the Netanyahu regime and what has been going on with respect to how much the tail is wagging the dog here. What is this all about? Do you think this is about trying to protect Netanyahu's reelection efforts this year? Do you think it's about Trump trying to distract from the Epstein files? Do you think it's about Trump trying to distract from the economy being in the tank, trying to use national security issues to pass what apparently is a draft resolution to federalize our elections? All of the above? Any other theories? What do you think?
I think it's everyone. I think it is definitely trying to secure Netanyahu's position as prime minister so that he doesn't go to prison. I think that it is definitely all of the reasons that you suggested, the 3 or 4 reasons that you suggested that Donald Trump is pursuing this. I believe it is a distraction. It was totally unnecessary. I think that the Epstein issue is going to really take him down, and he'll do anything and everything to make sure that doesn't happen. And so he doesn't care about the loss of life, the damage to countries, the damage to our relationship with other countries. Nothing matters to him but getting beyond this Epstein thing and making money. That's it. Most corrupt individual in this position in our history, Julie.
Anybody else for the Congresswoman before we let her get on with her day?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you for your work.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We wish you were sticking around. We will miss you. Okay, take care. Bye. Thanks, Congresswoman.
Thank you. God bless.
Bye. Bye. Love her, and she will be missed. That is my hometown. I live in New York, but that is my hometown Congresswoman from the great state of New Jersey. And
Jersey.
Part of New Jersey, Central Jersey.
Central New Jersey.
It does exist.
It does exist. She's from it, and you can see she has come from behind the wardrobe to join us here in the real world.
By the way, Julie, very importantly, are you Taylor ham or pork roll?
Do not insult me, Jeff. Well, neither. I think they're both disgusting, which I know gets me my Jersey card revoked. I am a sausage, egg, and cheese on a hard roll with salt, pepper, and ketchup roll. But if I had to call it something, I would call it Taylor ham.
Okay.
Although I would call it a hoagie instead of a sub. So I have my Bonifides.
That's the Southern creep, yeah.
That's the Southern thing, right? That's the Philly creeping in, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so only because there's a great place in Princeton, New Jersey, which I strongly recommend anybody visiting go to, called Hoagie Haven, which is where I grew up.
While you're there, also go to Taqueria, which is on Nassau, which is great.
Well, while you're there, also go to Chuck's Buffalo Wings, which is what the Menendez brothers bought after murdering their parents, because it's so good. It is so good that it's the first thing they spent money on.
Oh my God. That's dark.
Yeah, that is.
It's dark.
These are all my old haunts that I used to go to when I was young, which is why I gained the freshman 15 well before a freshman year in college. Anyway, so. Friends, I don't know. I mean, Congresswoman, I had a hard time hearing her because she was delayed quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I want to just reiterate what she said, which is the only thing that matters is calling your members or emailing them. That is all they respond to.
And posting online, which is absolutely true. I mean, these people are like, they're deeply online. Just so people know, like, Twitter's not real life, quote unquote, but it is, because that is all these people care about. They never leave the Beltway. All they care about is, do people like me online? And you have to inundate them with your pushback. And every time you hit a click like, the cards are stacked against us. We're talking about tech earlier, right? They stack the algorithm against their, the opposition, because the opposition is anti them making money, right? They need to make money. They don't. Tech is not blue or red. They're money, and that is all they care about. So they're going to help the regime continue on this path. So they're going to make sure that you see more and more and more of what they're saying. More and more and more of what the mainstream media is reporting on, in the way that we talked about earlier, sort of normalizing all of this to condition the American public into thinking that this is all okay. It's not. So every time that we hit click, a like or a subscribe or a share, or you comment on something, all of this feeds into the algorithm of the opposition, and that content, that message will be shown to more people. So it doesn't matter if you've got 5 followers on whatever platform it is, or 10 or 10,000. It matters. Add your voice into the mix, into the chatterbox. And I know, don't read the comments. It's not worth your mental health, but your comment does matter. And it does feed into an algorithm that these people pay a lot of attention to, because their value system, a lot of them, unfortunately, is deeply rooted in, does anybody like me? And that's all they respond to. And I say that for the left and the right, both sides.
Yeah, agreed. And if you live in a Republican district, email them anyway. I mean, they're probably not going to respond because they are worried about Trump. But look, the one thing I can tell you is this: it's all about self-preservation. And if they see that Trump's numbers continue to go down and that he's going to impact them, even in primaries. I mean, I have said from the beginning, the primary for all of us to pay attention to in May, it's coming up in a few months, is Thomas Massey's primary. Because if Thomas Massey wins, despite Trump throwing the kitchen sink at him, and not just Trump, but everybody, and Trump's super PAC, I mean, he's got millions, tens of millions being spent against him. If he wins, it will create a crack in the Republican base where they will understand that you can stand up to Trump and still win. And Massey, of course, has done that very prominently in the Epstein files, but not just the Epstein files. I mean, he was on the wrong side of Trump even before the Epstein files for a number of reasons. He wouldn't vote for budget issues. I mean, Thomas Massey is no liberal, let's be very clear.
No,
exactly.
he voted for the SAVE Act, which...
Yeah, but I mean, more than that, he's more to the right. He is opposed Trump because he thinks Trump is not right enough. But
wasn't it the family photo with all the rifles and stuff? Wasn't it him?
Yeah, what is fascinating about this is if Massey wins, it will create a massive crack in the Republican base.
That you can do it.
Yes, and Massey can do it. So let's all hope that Massey wins. And yes, Massey is in Kentucky. He is in northern Kentucky, right below the Ohio border, I believe is where his district.
Is that by chance the district where JD grew up?
It's a good question.
That is a good question.
Or his grandma is? I wonder.
Yeah, I can look it up. Look, I think what we're dealing with here is, I believe this is the end of MAGA, what we just saw today. I mean, it may be the end of the Iran regime too, but it also may be the end of this regime. Because every promise that Trump has made, he has now broken. Every single one. If you voted for Trump because you wanted the economy to do better, it's not. If you voted for Trump because you wanted criminals deported, I'm going to break some news to you. It is a lot easier to come for people who are here legally, like asylum seekers, because they are easier to find because they show up for... They
do their due diligence. They follow the rules.
Yeah, they show up for court hearings. They tell you where they are. The criminals don't. They're hiding out. So it's a lot easier to come for people who are here legally, who are migrants, than it is for people who are breaking the law, who are underground, which is why he's not.
Students sleeping in their beds at 6:30 in the morning, which ICE lied to get on campus at Columbia University yesterday and take a young woman at 6:30 a.m. from her room and detain her. She has been released since because there's a whole nother conversation to be had about Mamdani here and his weird relationship, and it's the whole thing is strange. But the more important point here is that that's what's happening here. It's not the gang bangers as Stephen Miller so eloquently puts it.
So I don't know why you might have voted for Trump, but if it was because you didn't want to get into any foreign wars, I got bad news for you today. Look at Jaclyn's reaction. I mean, Jaclyn, you are a member of the military, or you retired, but you look at your absolute fury at your comrades being put in harm's way based on lies. And that is not a reaction I think you're having as a Democrat or a Republican. That is a reaction you're having as somebody who served your country. Again, I'm saying this because I don't know why you would support Trump now, other than you want to stick it to the libs, which is their favorite subject.
And racism.
But that is a small, that is not a majority of even Trump supporters, right? Like that's not enough to defeat Kamala Harris. And there will be that rump support for Trump in the same way. And again, I'm not comparing him to Hitler, so don't come at me. But in the same way that even after World War II, there was still a rump support for Hitler of all these people who still supported what happened, even after all the devastation. But it certainly wasn't the vast majority of Germans anymore after what he did.
It's February 28th, 2026, and there's still people who support Hitler. And they work in our government, and they have microphones and podcasts. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is where like it's not going to be destroyed, but it must be broken. We must break them. We must break MAGA and this entire movement. It must be crushed.
So I just want to be very clear here about what's going on, which is this may be politically, this is not going to help Trump and the Republicans. The only way that it does is if he uses this as an opportunity to seize power in extrajudicial ways.
Yeah,
and
which is
and
scary.
so I will lend another plea before we get off the air here to folks, in addition to what Congresswoman Watson Coleman said about calling your member and your senator. Please bring attention to the fact that this is being done so that they can seize power under this draft resolution that they're putting out there, because the mainstream media is not talking about it. And it's not a conspiracy theory. It is something that the Washington Post reported. I think very good reporting on it on Thursday. Jeff, you pointed out it was a really shitty headline, but
they
the reporting
downplayed their own huge story, but yes.
But the story was huge and important.
Yeah.
And when you connect the dots, which the mainstream media has a terrible, terrible habit of not doing, they just do these one-offs without ever connecting what all of this means. This is what this is about, I believe, because he's given no other reason for it. So please, 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 please uplift that. People need to know what this is about. Those are the two things that I think we would ask people to do. Call your senators and Congress people and please connect the dots here. And I don't know if anybody else other than the four of us are talking about this, but they should be. And so please, if you watch other podcasts or talk to other independent media or even people in the legacy media, make it a point to have them connect those dots, because the more people understand that this is a power grab to stay in power, the more they understand that we are in, I believe, the most dangerous moment in our country's history since the Civil War, and maybe even before the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
9/11, Pearl Harbor, all the other things that you could think about, those were threats that were coming from, even the Cuban Missile Crisis, those were threats that were coming from outside.
Yeah.
This is the threat from within, where the President of the United States is trying to subvert the Constitution of the United States. And Jaclyn, you of all people know better than anybody else here what that means.
All enemies, foreign and domestic.
And domestic.
You know?
And he's an enemy that is domestic. He's a domestic enemy.
Amen.
Thoughts for the good of the order before we move on with our day? And I have to take my 13-year-old to squash lesson. Anybody else?
I would just add that, and I'm a broken record here, but a failure of imagination is a very dangerous thing. And for anybody, especially after 10 years of listening to this madman, cannot understand or comprehend that someone will do the worst things imaginable to everyone around him. Before, he will turn himself in, or he would allow himself to be vulnerable to going to jail. I mean, he ran for president again to not go to jail. That's what that was about, among just ego issues. But, don't have a lack of imagination, folks, because if you can imagine it, it is absolutely possible.
Yeah.
Everything's possible. Jaclyn?
I served my country after September 11th. That's when I decided to raise my right hand and put on my nation's cloth. And I volunteered to go to Iraq and Afghanistan because I believe in the rule of law. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in freedom and democracy. And I believe in using Americans' force of military for good. And I believe in following the rule of law. And I believe that there's a political process, democratic process to using military force, both domestically and internationally. And we've skipped that process. We've skipped that deliberate thought process in proposing information and intelligence to the American people and to the international community and using the American force for good. And right now we've spent our political capital in ways that have diminished our capacity to stand on the moral ground of freedom and democracy. And we've left our American service members out in the world for sitting ducks with no allies and not enough ammunition and munitions to support our troops. And I've had friends that have gotten blown up and killed, and I was just a lucky schmuck that didn't. And now we're going to be stuck in another war, a forever war with no political end state. For what? I'm not saying that I'm a Democrat or Republican, and I'm not saying this as a war dove or a war hawk. I'm saying that I believe in the democracy and the rule of law, and we have not followed through with this process. And for that, we need to stand up and have a conversation and debate in the American public and have a conversation with our representatives and our senators, because the president is doing this to subvert the rule of law so that he can maintain power. And we're going down a path where we're going to engage in World War III because he is scared he's going to lose power and people are going to die because of it. And I don't want to see my friends in uniform that are still there dying. And I don't want to see civilians dying because we decided to not have a deliberate debate and process, both domestically and internationally. I support and defend the Constitution, both foreign and domestic, and our president right now is the enemy from within.
And we thank you, Jaclyn, for having the bravery to do what you did, for having the bravery to say what you say, and for doing what I can't speak for Jeff, but certainly Michelle, but I certainly never had the guts to put on the uniform. So thank you for doing what you. Thank you for your entire career and your service for all of us.
Yeah. All I'll say at the end is to echo that, Jaclyn, it's an honor to meet you. And I thank you for the direct and firm statements you have made from your perspective. And so I can't say any more than what you've just said.
Yeah. All right, folks. On that note, thank you for joining us today for what was not supposed to be the show, but we have a president that will not even let us have our weekends in peace. Yeah. We will probably be back before the weekend is over for more breaking news.
Absolutely. And Julie, I was thinking of playing us out with the warmonger video I made back in January about the last time that we struck Iran. I thought I would just play us out with that.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Sorry, somebody's asking when the First Americans episode podcast air. Sometime next week. We're taping.
Yeah, my guess is Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, we're taping it on Sunday, excuse me, but we need to edit it. So if you have not watched the first episode of The Americans, do that in the next few days, and then we'll all talk about it. We have some incredible experts joining us, and also people who just love culture, pop culture, and but also
non-expert who loves television.
Yeah, but also people who are Russia experts, and specifically disinformation experts and KGB experts, and this is gonna be an insanely awesome rewatch party. So Jaclyn will be there. Jeff, if he has time, will pop in either this week or next week or any weeks that he wants.
Olga
Lautman. We've got Nina Jankowicz, for people who may or may not know, who the Russians went after big time because she ran the disinformation bureau for the Department of Homeland Security before Tucker Carlson and the Russians teamed up to get her fired. So she knows a little bit about Russian disinformation. We have me, who was alive in 1981 and always had a fear in the back of her mind that what if my parents are Russian spies and we're here? I would say that was my big. I was little.
Not to mention, Julie moved to the United States as a Jewish refugee at the time that the storyline of the show begins, which I think is really, really interesting, and such like a very unique and rare sort of aspect to this analysis too. I think it's going to be really fun. And also, one of my very best friends in the world, his name is Craig Miller. He has worked in advertising for the last 20 years. He is a hoot. He's one of my favorite people on earth, and he's going to join us too. It'll be a lot of fun. So
we're going to have an awesome Americans rewatch party. We're going to focus on culture. We don't want to talk politics on this one too much. So please join us if you want to have a brain relaxation moment.
Some reprieve.
All right, folks. See you later. Just so you know, as we're talking, there are explosions in Dubai and all over the UAE, basically, and in Tel Aviv over and over and over again, all over Israel. Ugh.
I know. And listen, just being in New York City right now, I mean, when I was reading the headlines from local news this morning, is like NYPD is amping up all extra security everywhere. I mean, we have the biggest population of Jewish people too, like outside Israel. So, I mean, for many reasons, the city of New York is a target for all of this. And, I guess it's part of the price of living here. But man, it's not a great feeling. I'm just going to say that. So,
okay. I am in Pennsylvania today. Jeff is in New Jersey. Jaclyn's down in Florida. Michelle's in New York. Everybody stay safe wherever you are all over the world joining us today. Please be careful. Please be vigilant. Please be safe. Pray for peace. I don't know what else to say because we're certainly not getting it with this president.
pray for peace and our troops. And our troops.
And our troops. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Playing us out with Warmonger. Bye, everybody.
Yep. Bye.
We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into.
Tonight, the first images of American missiles launching from a U.S. Navy ship.
The White House releasing this dramatic video of the U.S. blowing up a boat in the Southern Caribbean.
My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier.
Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela.
We need to clean house of all of the warmongers and America last globalists.
And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence.
Big attack, and you really did a big job
in American history.
As a candidate for president, I loudly pledged great nations do not fight endless wars. One of the reasons I was the only president in generations who didn't start a war is that I was the only president who rejected the catastrophic advice of many of Washington's generals, bureaucrats, and the so-called diplomats who only know how to get us into conflict, but they don't know how to get us out.
So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition.
When I'm back in the White House, we will expel the warmongers, the profiteers, and take over our government, and we will restore world peace.
But we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. You can be grossly incompetent and be a threat to democracy. We're going to have our very large United States oil company. We're in the oil business. In other words, we'll be selling oil. Opposed to the Iraq war, and I actually did say, don't go in, don't go in, don't go in. But I said, if you're going to go in, keep the oil. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries.
Just like I predicted Iraq was a disaster, I'm the only one that said don't do Iraq.
Spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken oil infrastructure, and start making money.
This is what we have as our president. We're going to end up in World War III. We're going to end up in a depression.
And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so.
I will build a military that's so strong that we'll never have to use it.
In recent weeks, the U.S. military has launched strikes in Nigeria, Syria, and Somalia, seized oil tankers off Venezuela, hit Iranian Revolutionary Guard positions inside Iran.
I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell.
So was this operation a message that you're sending to Mexico?
Something's going to have to be done with Mexico. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now.
Yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned.
He's also threatening to annex Canada.
Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state, okay? It really should.
Canada should honestly become our 51st state.
And invade Greenland and take over Panama.
Greenland. We have to have Greenland. We need Greenland. Actually, we need Greenland for national protection. It's not a question of, do you think we can do without it? We can't. They say that Denmark was there 300 years ago or something with a boat. Well, we were there with boats too.
We're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually.
We need Greenland for national security and international security. The world needs us to have Greenland.
And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Doctrine.
World War III has never been closer than it is right now.
Hi, time for a question. Mr. President, do you have a New Year's resolution?
I have.
Let's hear it.
Peace on earth. Peace on earth.